This is the Authority Company Podcast, conversations with leaders that are designing our future. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and today's guest is Gina Riley, an executive career strategist and the creator of the Career Velocity System. With a background in executive search and career coaching, Gina has helped senior leaders land competitive roles and navigate high-stakes career transitions. She's an interview skills expert and author of the new book, Qualified Isn't Enough, where she shares proven strategies for building executive presence, accessing the hidden job market, and becoming the clear choice for leadership positions. Gina Riley, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I am awesome, and I'm so excited to have this conversation.
Me too. Thank you very much for joining me today. And so I want to start by talking about how much things have changed in your world of like talent acquisition, broad term, because I've been doing this for like 5 years, business podcast. And I remember when I first started, if I ever spoke to an HR professional or a leader who handles any kind of hiring, they'll be like, I don't believe in transferable skills. That's not a thing. I only hire people that have the similar experiences for the position I'm filling. Then that little pesky pandemic happened, Gina, and then all of a sudden we're like, oh yeah, transferable skills? Yeah, we'll hire on those. That's a great idea. And then you used to see these like blips that happen, like quiet quitting and all these like fancy terms that you folks love to use. And currently, while we're recording this, there's a new one called job hugging. And if you're not familiar, it came out of a Corn survey about people holding on to their jobs for dear life because of the uncertainty with the economy. So let's dig into job hugging at the jump here, Gina.
I think that's a real thing because people are absolutely petrified to be out of work, even if they're unhappy. And then I think that plays to the fact of our unhappy workers serving our organization. Is that a good thing? So we have cultural issues going on within our companies, but then we have all the social, economic, political, other things going on. But we have so many of our friends across the country getting laid off in droves. You've got the Intels and the Nikes and I'm in the Pacific Northwest. Thousands and thousands of people are out of work. So I think job hugging is a thing, even though people may not want to stay in their job.
Yeah, it's funny, again, how much things change, because if you recall, like people, and this is one of the things I've always talked about, because I'm a card-carrying Gen Xer, and we were always of the ilk of go to college, get a job, work there for 30 years, retire, and die.
Get the watch. You forgot the watch.
And then the gold watch. You get the gold watch, they kick you out the door, and then you're out. And then the millennials came around. They were like, no, I don't want to work at a place where I'm not going back to. I'm not happy. I have no allegiance to this person who's hired me. It's they've hired me to do a thing. I'll do the thing, and then if I don't want to do the thing, I leave. And even Gen Z is sort of feeling that mobility. And now with job hugging, it's weird how quickly things shift in your, like, as someone who does what they do for a living, how hard is it to keep, and it's not like a trend or a fad, but it's almost like just like the way the wind blows in your end of the world, right, Gina?
Well, obviously there's going to be these ups and downs ever since the pandemic. We've had multiple economic crises and then the pandemic as well.
Right.
But why don't we talk about the thing that is consistent? And that is, at the end of a day, any given candidate vying for a job has to be aligned with the opening and with what that hiring manager most needs right now. And you started the conversation with transferable skills, and I love that topic. And the reason why is a lot of times transferable skills are what we call the soft skills or our power skills. And so I read a study out of Rutgers University, and it kind of charged me up because they were talking about how caregivers, people who have been maybe out of the workforce and are caregiving of other people, whether it's children or elderly, et cetera, have built up these kinds of soft skills that are very valuable in the marketplace. And I agree. But what the article fails to address is, how do those people translate and explain how they add value with those transferable skills? So caregiving aside, if I am making even a career pivot, I need to be the most valuable player that gets chosen, and I have to show up as the obvious choice.
And you talk about those gaps that people get in their resume because they have to be, they can't have a full-time job because they're taking care of either an elderly person, a child. And I know there has been, speaking of shifts, like this idea of where people are not as, or the hiring side are not as put off by these gaps anymore, as long as there's an explanation, right, Gina?
You know, I have recruited, I've done executive search, I'm mostly doing the career coaching now, and when I'm looking at gaps, I just want something that sounds reasonable, right? And ever since the pandemic, I think it is, the bubble was burst out of the being all wound up about, "Oh gosh, there's a career gap." If I say, "Oh yeah, pandemic hit, I got laid off, I had teenagers that, I was running around to sports before they started driving, and then I'm ready. It's 2 years later, I'm ready to go." That sounds reasonable to me. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah, and I've always compared, like, the hiring side of a company almost like dating, and I know people don't like to talk about dating when it comes to hire, but to me, I always felt like, I've been married for a long time, but I remember, like, when I was single, no woman on the planet was interested in me, but then as soon as I got a girlfriend, everyone thought I was, like, the hottest guy. So, and I think that sort of translates to the job hiring world, where you'll see these people be like, "Yeah, but I'd rather hire this person who's currently has a job as opposed to someone who doesn't have a job." There are parallels there, right, Gina?
1,000%. I mean, really, especially from an executive search standpoint, when a company spends all that money to invest in an executive search firm that's going to market for you, they want to know you're scouring the market. And if you have the ability to even hire at a global scale, which we all have that reach now, no, if you're at a doing executive search or any kind of search, we wanna know we got, like, the prized possession, and so the person that's doing spray and pray, apply, apply, apply isn't necessarily, you know yes, they may have the qualifications and the skills, they might be the best candidate that gets chosen, but the companies wanna know we've gone out and we plucked people into the process so we can say, "Look who we found. They are one of the best of the best."
Yeah, that makes it tough on everybody, on the hiring side and and the hiree side. And I want to dig into the book a little bit. And first, the title, "Qualified Isn't Enough." We, why was it important for you? And obviously, it's sort of like your thesis, but tell me about the reason of qualified is not enough.
Okay, so, as an author, you probably know how hard it is to come up with a title, and I have
Yeah.
18 pages of single space notes, and it was all based on my coaching program, which is called Career Velocity, and it just wasn't coming together, because I didn't think people would get it when they went to the bookstore. And so one day, it really the tidal wave came to me, which was, everyone says this in the job market. I applied to 200 jobs over the last 2 months. I didn't get one call back, and I was qualified for all of them. What is the answer to that, Joe? It is, being qualified isn't enough. Become the candidate of choice, you must get seen to get heard, which means you must step away from the spray and pray, apply, apply, apply through job boards, because those applicant tracking systems, the ATS, are really difficult to navigate, and only a small percentage really break through and get seen for a lot of reasons. That's a whole nother, category, and I have people you can talk to about that. They're specialists in the ATS. But here's the thing. You've got to first get centered on your unique value proposition. So, if you're sitting in an interview room, virtually or otherwise, with four similarly qualified people, what is your unique value proposition? What will you say that distinguishes you and makes you the person that they really want to have, even though the other four people might be qualified? This is why being qualified isn't enough. If you're not able to go there and get there fast with your interview stories, then you will miss opportunities.
Yeah. And I know your bag's more executives, but you mentioned the resume thing, and a friend of mine is a professional resume writer. And I remember when I was younger, there was this whole idea about, like, fancy resumes with, like, great fonts and lines and colors. And this guy, who writes for a living, he showed me, like, some of these resumes that gets people hired, and I'm like, "That's so plain." It's
Yeah.
like Arial 12-point font. There's not even like any fancy
New
bullets or
Times
anything.
Woman.
Yeah, nothing like that. And so he mentioned this ATS system, this basically, like, this computer that analyzes resumes, looks for keywords, the magical algorithm that we always talk about when we're talking about social media and TikTok and all that stuff. So tell me about that. If our folks not familiar with that, with how that works, Is it essentially just that where it's basically just looking for keywords and then trying to find right fits and then dwindle it down from the vast number of resumes that have come through the system?
Yeah, the way I actually talk about this in chapter 6 of my book, and I interviewed a couple of experts on ATS. One person has 2 patents that I quote in there, and essentially and also recruiters that use these systems. And the system is designed by humans, first of all, we have to remember that, and programmed by humans. Now, does each recruiter know how it's programmed? Maybe, maybe not. Okay. So, and that's not their fault. It's they may get thrown into a job, they're recruiting, and they don't know maybe what some of the barriers are inside that system. We know that there's bias built in. There's a lot of media coverage right now about that. Essentially, though, a recruiter can use it to help build a keyword search, profile of what they're trying to extract. And so you really do need to be matching up to the keywords and phrases in context. If you're throwing your keywords in white font where they can't be seen by the naked eye, but then it is getting read in the ATS, the recruiter sees that and it looks like a bunch of junk. So, bottom line is for most people, networking and gaining referrals to get seen by people who need you are the best way of gaining that next opportunity. It does not mean you don't apply through job boards, but it means you spend 5% of your time doing that. And if you're going to bother Joe, you've got to follow up and start looking for decision makers. Who are the recruiters? Who's the talent acquisition team? How can you get seen and heard?
And that's why you write in a book that you believe that resumes alone are no longer like the key. And it's funny too because another conversation I had with someone else about resumes was I think we all come from this world of like the one golden resume. And now, as you mentioned with the ATS, like you have to refine your resume for every job you apply because every different job is looking for those keywords. So the resume game has gotten so complicated. Right, Gina? On top of everything you say everyone else needs in terms of the networking and knowing hiring managers, stuff like that. But like, if you don't have that resume right for that role, you're done for before you even have a chance to use all your networking skills.
Sure, because the person reading it is gonna say, "I don't get it." Maybe you won't pop up through the ATS, that's possible, but let's even say I'm working with 2 folks that were laid off from one of the biggest companies in the world, laid off people by the thousands, and when you get people in that let's say 50 years old, and they've done a lot of program management, project management, and they look similar on paper to everyone else if you're using generic terms, how do you break through? So a lot of times that resume, it may speak for you when you're not in the room, but the humans that are talking about you is how you get that first phone call. Then the resume are talking points. Resume's not necessarily the door opener.
Yeah. Are you spoiled it earlier you when you mentioned career velocity? Tell us a little more about that and how that differs from traditional, career coaching.
Thank you for asking. So, back in 2018 or so, I started working with clients trying to solve this problem of like, hey, I need help with my resume. And what I found out working with mature people is they had a really hard time telling their story. And so I went to work. I read 20 books and synthesized all that information. I listened to 120 podcasts, synthesized all that information, and I started testing this model that became career velocity. It's 9 steps. Steps 1 through 5, which are outlined in my book, and they read kind of like this. What do you need to do? Why do you need to do it? And then the how. It's almost like a workbook. And I walk people through chapters 1 through 5, phase 1, on how to build your unique value proposition, as I do with my one-on-one coaching clients. And what we're answering after phase 1 is the answer to tell me about yourself. And it is a lot of work to get there. We're building, building, building. And that answer is not an elevator pitch. In fact, my next Forbes Coaches Council article, almost ready to get launched, is about how the elevator pitch is costing you opportunities. Because all these job seekers are told, go get your elevator pitch in order, which is what? 60 to 90 seconds. But if me, as a recruiter, if I'm asking you, give me a highlights reel about your career journey, that is not a catchy marketing phrase. I need you to give me a highlights reel with the kind of EQ or emotional intelligence that says, I understand pretty much what you need, and I'm going to spoon feed you my highlights so we can get this conversation started.
Wow. It's great. It's funny too. So we talk about all this work to get even like through the door, but then comes the interview. And I've become friends with Anna Papalia. She's like that big TikTok influencer about job interviews, and she's basically made a living helping people prepare for that job interview. For on your from your side of things, what are some of the common mistakes people when they're able to maneuver everything we just talked about, the resume game, the networking, the getting your resume in front of the right people? What are some of the mistakes people are making? You talk a little bit about the elevator pitch. What are some of the
Yeah,
mistakes people are making in that interview?
absolutely. Okay, I can kind of give you a through line. One is they're not ready to answer, tell me about yourself. And so they kind of have a miss right on the front end of the conversation because people are evaluating you from the get-go. We make decisions and we humans are biased and we're making a judgment very quickly, and you have a chance to redeem yourself, but you got to kind of nail that. Then, where I see people making mistakes is rambling through their storytelling, not using models that help them drive the storytelling narrative, which I talk about in my book. And I also created a framework in chapter 7 on interview prep called the rare candidate, which is, and in my world, because I am working with people 40 to 69, mature, have a lot of experiences, what we're trying to do is help them focus a lot of their energy on research. That's the first part of rare. Then aligning their stories with what that company needs, and they understand the mission and the values and the financials and what the goals are of that company and all the key players they're going to interview with. So research, align, then read the room is the second R. And without professional presence or executive presence and the ability to read each interviewer that you speak with, whether it's the 25-year-old first line recruiter, it's the admin who greets you at the desk, or it's the CEO. They're all decision makers. And so you've got to read each room and figure out what does this person need to know about me in this moment? Not all my stories in this moment. And then the E is you need to evaluate the offer. Is it right for you?
Wow, that's great. It's funny you mentioned that the number of people you have to talk to, and that's one of the things that I found weird as I got older. I came from a world, working in radio in New York was like basically you got interviewed by like the boss, and that was it. And no, there was no layers or anything like that. It was very old school. And now, fast forward, a couple decades later, it's like a car wash. Like you're literally speaking to like everyone in the building. And so, tell me about that in terms of because we've already seen like how tough the job market is and then how tough it is to actually get an interview for these jobs. But then once you get the interview, it's not just one, it's a lot of them.
It
Uh,
it
tell me
is.
about that a little bit.
Yeah, I have one horror story in particular is I was working with a chief technology officer, and as we started to work together, and we started building his UVP, but he's like, "Hey, I have interviews, former teammates who are VPs at this company, and I know the CEO brought me into this interview process." 6 months later, 21 interviews later, and remember, he knows several of the VPs and he knows the CEO, he's already worked with them. They asked for a 20-second interview and he said, "No, thank you." And then they made him the offer. And then he had a very hard decision to make because he's like, this was excruciating. He was running a team of 200 people at the current job he already had, and then dragging through this process. And he said yes, and he actually loves it, and things are going really well. But it's absolutely terrible. I worked with a VP of global sales at a major CPG company who was interviewing at a bigger global company, and it took gosh, it was 4 months. He found out he didn't get the job because they had to promote someone from within or else they were afraid to lose him. I tell this story in the book, by the way. And then here's the beautiful thing. That's January to like April, May. November comes, the internal contacts at that company call up and they say, "Hey, the guy that got promoted is gone." What? Okay. So my guy started re-engaging with the global VP who he had interviewed with. They wanted to make him the offer, but they said they couldn't. And so within 2 weeks, my guy had an offer. And that's from keeping the relationships warm. That is the hidden job market. That job did not go back to market. And he had already interviewed, we'd done all the prep, he'd even done finalist presentation that we set him up for.
Wow. And you write about the hidden job market. Let's dig into that a little bit. I mean, you kind of explained it there, but like it's basically jobs that are out there, but they're not advertised essentially, right?
Exactly. So the way I like to describe the hidden job market is not a place where jobs are literally hiding from you behind a planter.
Right.
The hidden job market is when decision makers, a team all the way up to a board, any level of decision maker, they're sitting there at the round table and one person says, I'm retiring, or I'm going out on medical leave, or hey, Sam's getting fired. We're going to have to replace him, but we don't want to make that public, right? This is where jobs are percolating and they may not have gone to market. So if you're already talking to people in the marketplace regularly and keeping your relationships warm, you can be one of the first people thought of, even if they post it. Now you get swept into the front of the line, and then you want to be the lead horse the whole race.
So I know you work with a lot of folks that are sort of like transitioning from like their young and prime to like working in their to being in their 40s. And like a lot of companies say, oh boy, 40s, got to send them out to pasture. And then people are like, well, yeah, I'm only 40. And I have another 20 something years to do on this planet.
Maybe
So
more.
if not more, right? I mean, I often joke with someone the other day. They were like, when do you plan on retiring? I'm like, I'm not. I'm an immigrant's kid. I'll probably work till I'm like dead. So tell me about like the mindset of these folks that not that the world is like careers are a young person's game, but a lot of times they are, and really because of economics. Because as you know, as you get older and you have families, you need more money to support families and homes and stuff like that. But tell me about the in terms of like mindset when you speak to these folks, like to keep them positive in a world where you may not feel like you fit in anymore, but
Mm,
you still have to find a way.
absolutely. There's so much to say about this. Age bias is a thing, and according to the law, age 40 and older is considered by law old as for hiring purposes. And so, you tell a 41-year-old that kind of thing, and they're like very confronted. It's a terrible sensation. Here's the thing. Each of us needs to consider ourselves a solution to someone else's problem. We're a business solution. And so as we navigate job search, we need to be focused on those things. And yes, age can be a barrier because people have biases about us. And so can we tamp down some of the concerns based on how we appear? Absolutely. We as humans make a biased judgment in 3 seconds or less. That's science. So, what can you do to show up at that first get go and let people get relieved about, like, okay, I'm not really thinking about age right now? I was working with someone early in my coaching journey, and he wore glasses that were the kind inside that would be a little bit gray for like also transitioning outside. It gave him a dated look. And so, that was a conversation those are hard conversations to have with people is about appearance, but that's my job is to, bring these things up. Um, yes, bias is there. We cannot let that stand in our way. And we can't carry a jaded, sense of entitlement either into these situations. We have to consider being qualified isn't enough and that we need to position our sharp tools directly aimed at the target and what they need. It's all about reading the room and figuring out what do I have that they need.
That's good stuff. That's great. One of the things you talk about in the book is incorporating a UMAP into systems. Tell me more about that.
Yes, that's on the front end of my career velocity program. It's chapter one. Kristen Cherry created the UMAP. It's a career profile assessment. It won an innovator award, I think, in like 2020 or something like that. And what it does is it gives me a quick hit on my clients' top 5 strengths from StrengthsFinder, their values. See, this will all tie together. Their motivated and burnout skills. So that we have a conversation about what you don't want to do, and then their personality. It's a careers related personality assessment called the Holland. The UMAP, it's very affordable. It's 129. If you buy my book though, she gave me a coupon code for the readers of the book. I really want people to take it because when people just take personality assessments, DISC, Myers-Briggs, etc., some of that language in there isn't very flattering. And we're not taking that into an interview with us. We need to create a story of positivity about who we are, how we show up in the world, and infuse that into the storytelling. And so UMAP is so important in my work that I went to bat with Kristen and she said, absolutely, you can put this information in the book. So that's chapter one. It's foundational.
All right, that's great. That's excellent. You know, one of the things that I find fascinating in terms of this job world and try and is the fact that you mentioned the risk mitigation, and I think that's why a lot of this is. My football coach used to say, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Is there any way? I mean, we've been talking a lot about from the hiree side, but like
Mhm.
on the hiring side, can they simplify it, or is it one of those too big to fail where it's every job position role has to be like an end all be all we must move all mountains to fill this position? Like, is there anything in that chain that can be simplified, you think?
I would think so. And what I would also say is just as job seekers are not trained to create a job search strategy and communicate about themselves, we don't learn, you and I did not learn this in college, right? I graduated from college in 91. This was not taught. But what I will say on the other side is we are not teaching employees who interview people how to assess talent. We don't teach them how to interview. We may say, here's the behavioral interviewing guide. Flip through and pick some questions. Hey, Joe, tell me about a time when you failed.
Right.
We're not aligning it with a job description. So what do we need to do? I'm also an interview skills trainer in corporate.
I
So
can
what
tell.
what we do is we train people first to consider what is missing on my team, why is the role being opened, and we design a job description wrapped around the toolkit that's needed now, not just based on someone who vacated the opportunity. We don't teach people how to create an effective job description. The job description is the North Star. We should be asking questions related to that JD. And then we back into what skills are needed to do that job, what's required, what's nice to have. Then we train our hiring teams, everyone who interviews, CEO, first line employee, doesn't matter, how to ask the questions, how to listen, and then how to probe and use their intelligence to navigate a conversation and not just pull questions off of a shelf.
I love it. Good stuff. Good stuff. How about a quick little life hack? For you, we referred to it earlier, but the tell me about yourself question. What's a good hack for folks that are going to get that question, usually up front, when they're interviewing for a job? Tell me about yourself. And I think most people are like, I don't know. I got a dog. I'm married. I got kids. Like, what are some PowerPoints there that people can use during that interview?
Oh, I have many slides in this PowerPoint, my friend, but I will try to streamline it for you. So, the first thing is you must know yourself, and that's creating the unique value proposition or the UVP. So, again, aligned with my model, you're developing your unique strengths, values, and all of that, the language around that. Then you're bringing in your leadership approach or how you influence people, even if you don't have a title. Then you're developing your career story so that you can pick out the themes and patterns of your career. If you go lay out your whole story, starting from your origin story of when you started education to now, and you really look at how did I get each job? What was the catalyst? And I walk through this in my book painstakingly how to do it. Then we pick out the themes and patterns. And then we fast forward to that. Tell me about yourself in chapter 5. And I have a framework. I call it the 3/3 because it's that simple. It's a table with 3 columns. And you're writing down a few bullet points to remind yourself, what did I do early career? What was really important related to what I'm targeting? Mid-career, what was I doing? What skills was I developing? What industries did I touch? Etc. Then you're going to spend most of your time talking about what I've done recently in the past 5+ years, maybe 10, depending on your age and how old you are in your career. And then you're pivoting. That fourth column that's not represented is the reason why I think I'm such a good fit for this opportunity is based on these touch points that I just explained to you. If you haven't done this work, you can't thread the needle quickly. And you need to do this in 3 to 5 minutes. And again, my article that I'm going to write for that I've written for Forbes is the elevator pitch isn't going to cut it. It's going to be some catchy phrase that people are like, okay, that's boring. You need to connect the dots, for people. And you can only connect the dots if you've done the inner work and you've got it laid out.
Nice. Love it. Love it. Is there another question? I know the tell about yourself is kind of common. Is there another question that kind of trips people up? The one that I think bothers me the most is like, what's your weakness to people? And I'm sure people have like the biggest BS. My biggest weakness is I work too hard. Like all this
Yeah.
stuff. Is that one that's a common one that people trip on? What's another one that people might have issues with?
Well, first of all, the answer to your question is yes. Why is it common? Because we haven't trained people to ask any better questions than that. Why don't we ask a question that relates to a skill we're trying to uncover to hear if they problem solve something adequately or if that seems like a weakness and then we can poke on it? Or we can pivot and say, tell me about a time when you did this thing that was awesome. And then we say, nobody's perfect. Tell me about a time when that kind of thing didn't go well and what did you learn? So I think what I'm training people to do is to be the smartest person in the room, so to speak, not go and bulldozer over interviewers by any measure, but think about what do they really want when they ask these questions? What are they after? And they want to reduce their risk. So if they're asking something dumb, in my opinion, like tell me about a weakness with no context, you need to be prepared for, ill-prepared interviewers. And I like the way that you handled it, the way that you started it off and, doing a backhanded like, I work so hard, I work late and that's a weakness, but I get so much done. Avoid that. Everybody sees through that.
That's good. That's good. All right. I always wrap up these interviews taking folks behind the dedication of the book, and you dedicate yours to my husband, Sean Riley, and my sons, Keegan and Addison. Nice Italian names I see there, but who always believe in me, even when I'm full of Gina freaking Riley mode. Your unwavering support from my bold, get it done spirit keeps me going. Why was it so important to dedicate this to your fam?
uh, They're really proud of me. I mean, my kids are 23 and 25 now. My husband is my COO for the business and they're here every step of the way. My husband had to read so many of the drafts. So without their support and now I'm literally handing them the book now and they're just to see that their pride is just really touching. It's super cool. And I'm kind of a spaz. So I'm Gina freaking Riley and they take the good with the bad.
Spoken like a true Gen Xer. Her name is Gina Riley. The book, Qualify Isn't Enough, Develop Your Story, Land the Interview, Win the Job. Gina, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that's going to do it for this episode. If you want to find out more information about Gina and her other amazing authors, go to theauthoritycompany.com.